Okay, so welcome to this hopefully pretty quick stream because I think I mentioned on Twitter this is somewhat impulsive and the MacBook fan is on in a loft. It's really hot. It's probably about 40 degrees up here, which for the UK is very hot. So I'm going to explain what's going on here. Basically, this is a redo of the Akash quick start deployment instructions, right, with Akashlytics. I'm just going to go through it on a stream to show you how it works. And in true, is it Art Attack? I think it's Art Attack. There was a TV show when we were kids in the UK where Blue Peter, it's Blue Peter. They say, here's one I made earlier, and they'd show you the finished thing before you get started. Now, I'm going to show you the finished thing, partly because it might not work doing it live. That often is the case. So we've got this deployment here in Akashlytics, which is the desktop app for Akash, as Greg told me you should pronounce it. We can see the deployment is called YOLO. We put some balance into an escrow account so that we can actually launch the application, about $11 worth. And it's telling you that will buy you about 5 days of this particular instance. And we'll see that in a minute, what the specs of that are. And I'll also show you how to get started with Akashlytics. So you can do this all via the command line, but it makes more sense to do it in Akashlytics because there's quite a bit of trial and error involved in getting your first node up. What we're doing here is we're running an RPC. So it means we have to sync it with the network, but it's not an actual validator node, right? So I can prove that this is working by going to leases, which is essentially the high level information for this deployment, and going down the bottom here, and you can see there's a URI provided. We've basically mapped, it's essentially like Kubernetes, right? So we've mapped an ingress. You can kind of see here that there's some forwarded ports, but also we've mapped an ingress to port 80 so that we can expose it on a standard kind of, hit it with a request on port 80. It will show you the thing, right? And we can see that here. This is actually what happens when you hit that. Well, actually, technically, what happens when you hit that link is you get this page, which maybe I can blow up a bit. 1 second. You can always tell a professional stream when somebody has to go away because somebody's bashing on their front door. Okay. So I've completely lost the thread of where I was going with this. So yeah, these are the available RPC endpoints for an RPC node exposed on port 80. And I'm just wondering whether I should just kill the stream and start over again. But whatever, such is life. That guy really fucked up any plan of making this work. Hello, Marty. Welcome to the stream. You've just missed me ducking out to go and answer the door, which has left like a minute of dead air on the stream and really confused whoever jumps in at that point. Yeah, we have an RPC up here. These are the endpoints that you can access. Crucially, we want to hit the status one to show this thing is actually working. And the important data point, which we've blown up here, is latest block height, right? So we can see that it's going to increment. Refresh and refresh and refresh. We can see it's incrementing, right? So, and then if we look, we can see 6358925 on mint scan is the current mainnet, the tip of mainnet. Oops, just refresh that one. And we can see, well, it's 97 now, but if we actually go back to mint scan, it's going to be 97 or 928 or 99, something like that. It's, block every 6 seconds, whatever. So yeah, 928. So this shows you that this actually did work. Okay, we have a working RPC running on Akash. Cool. So how did we get here, and what have we got? So if you look in the Akash documentation, I'm going to keep jumping between Akash and Akash because I'm an idiot. If you look in the Akash documentation, you'll see that there's a deployment a setup walkthrough for Akashlytics, a desktop app, right? And if you just step through these, it's very straightforward. If you're familiar with Kepler, you'll have no problem setting it up. You basically just need to import a mnemonic, preferably a new one, with about 5 Akash AKT in it. You'll need a few more if you're going to do anything more complex. And then you can use that to essentially fund an escrow wallet, which will then keep your deployments live, right? For most of these examples, you're going to be using about 5 because you're just experimenting around. So not a huge amount. And if that deployment ends, it comes back to you. So not a big deal. Cool. Okay. And so that application, Akashlytics, who knows, answer on a postcard, is this. Once you've funded it and logged in, which you'll do with a mnemonic, you'll be asked and prompted to create a certificate. That essentially means that you can then identify yourself with the scheduler that Akash run, is my understanding of it anyway. And that I've already done. You can see it's got this little tick up here, and you can regenerate it, and there's some other options there. But so when you first log in, you'll need to go up in the top right here, generate a certificate. And it's definitely easier, I think, anyway, to do this via Akashlytics than it is to do it on the command line. Hello, other people that have joined the stream. I hope you missed the bit where I had to step out to answer the door. That was really weird. Cool. So key elements of this that you're going to have to deal with are probably the dashboard, which shows you what's up and live, the network capacity of Akash. There's templates, which if you have a particular thing you want to deploy, like WordPress blog, something like that, a Next app, there's probably a template for it on this templates tab over here. Providers is probably the well, deployments is obviously, if you've got a few of these, you can see I've just got a bunch of nonsense named ones that with random 4 words that I was experimenting with yesterday. And then providers is probably the most interesting tab if you're curious as to what's going on the network. So the way Akash works is you put up a job that you want done, a compute job, like running a server. In this case, we're going to run an RPC. And then people, providers, I guess, automatically bid for your business. And those providers are kind of listed here. So there's some interesting things you might want, like we run a lot of our workloads on AWS or GCP, things like that. So we have a really high interest in high quality compute. And so we have, if you want, okay, it's not given that only high quality compute will be audited, but you can flick this one here and you'll get audited providers, and then you can see some of the information about them here. Unfortunately, this application, I can't really blow up any bigger, so that's why I'm having to describe it in words. But if you open it up, you'll see for yourself how this works. And you have some more information on each of these data points, who audited it, who it's run by, etc., and then what tier it is. But all of the providers things mainly for info, because whether or not you're actually can I zoom in on that dashboard? I wish I could, but I don't think there's maybe there. Oh, hang on, maybe I'm lying. Oh man, you can zoom in. I was lying to you earlier. Hold on. Actually, it'd be funny if it just zoomed in my entire screen, but let's give it a go. Okay, that kind of worked, right? So yeah, this is just going to show you the providers, right? And that my goodness is actually really weird to look at just here in front of my face. But you can see some of the main stats on them basically. But this is not, you can't just choose to launch on these guys. It's not like AWS or anything like that. It's a marketplace, but the bids come in automatically during the process of launching, which we'll see in a minute, right? So let's go back to our active deployment and let's see how this all fits together. So we've got this deployment called YOLO because why not? And that's actually like now overwhelming to look at. It's so big. Because this is 2 vCPUs, 16 gig of RAM, 350 gig hard disk. It's an RPC. So recently Akash brought in persistent storage, but we don't need that because it's an RPC. And we're going to use Cosmos Omnibus, which is maintained by our good friend Tom of EcoStake, which basically allows you to sync a node quickly. So we're going to assume that these are throwaway for the purpose of this tutorial, right? So if something goes wrong, we'll just bring up a new one. No worries, okay? And then we can see again, this is, we're using an audited provider for this deployment, okay? So like I showed a little bit earlier, this is live. You can believe me, it's live. If you don't believe me, it's live. You can see the actual node logs here. Now, if you're a node operator, you'll recognize the classic peer error, but in between all the peer errors, you'll see there you go, minted coins, commit sync. So there are blocks happening, and we showed that we are actually at the tip of mainnet. So this has worked, this deployment. What did we actually use to deploy it though? That is a good question. We used a manifest, and we've actually changed it from the Akash examples repo. And I'm going to make it as big as I can here. That's, oh God, it's still getting bigger. Okay, that was, if anything, bigger than I wanted to make it. Let's make it smaller so we can actually see some of the words. Hey, there we go. All right. Wow, this is, I have a very big monitor, which is why it looks so small on the stream. So now it's just like 1 foot high in front of, okay, not 1 foot high, but okay. So we have a manifest here. You can get this at the Cosmos Omnibus repo, which I will post a link to because I should have got it up before. It's basically overclock/Cosmos Omnibus, which I'll post in the stream there. There we go. And in there, if you go into the cache folder, Akash, and then look at the deploy file, which I'll also post, that is what this is based on. But there are some crucial differences, okay? So, and I'll quickly go over those. One of them is that the persistent peers that are pulled in by default didn't work for me. So I used another friend of the show, Polkachu, maintains a really, really useful thing called the live peers application thing. Okay, I don't know if it has a technical name, but it's the live peers thing, right? The technical name, live peers thing from Polkachu, right? And there we go. You can look at it for every Cosmos network, but the key here is that you can grab a bunch of peers from this box here that are taken from the live network to put into your config file. Now, we actually don't need to put them in the config file because the way that Akash works is you throw a Docker container at it, and Cosmos Omnibus is just a collection of Docker containers that are pre-built for you to use using a common configuration pattern. Tendermint allows you to override configuration with particular environment variables that are like node name and then the thing that's in the configuration file, but all caps. And there's an additional useful, there's a couple of extra additional shorthands for configuring the containers. All this is written down in the Cosmos, in the Cosmos Omnibus repo. So if you have a look there, you'll be able to see these configuration options and how they're fleshed out. But the one that's relevant for us right here is P2P persistent peers because we want to overwrite them. So all I've done, I've copy and pasted the peers from here, from Polka's excellent website, into P2P persistent peers. I've added it as an environment variable. So when that container launches, it will launch with those peers. And so then what it will do is it will launch a Docker container with the Akash binary already set up. It will configure it with these things here. I've configured a moniker, the chain JSON, which is you'll look again. It's maintained by Overclock, which is Akash, with some essentially metadata about the chain, like what the chain name is, stuff like that. You can override this yourself with your own data if you want. And then a snapshot, you can also override that with your own data. This just happens to be a known snapshot that's taken every night, I think at 0 hours UTC. So that's what we're going to use because it was taken only 14-15 hours ago, and that's fine. And then minimum gas price, which is just whatever's in the current Akash docs, right? Then here's the other bit I mentioned earlier. We're going to expose port 26657, which is the RPC port, which again, we've shown is actually up right now. Say up it blah 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 6359030 is current block 31, and on mint scan it's exactly the same, right? So again, you blow that up so you don't have to believe me. 00063599032, and it's about to be 033, I would imagine. And if we look at this, it's going to be about that 033. There we go. So the RPC is working and it's exposing the RPC port on port 80, so we can hit it in a web browser. Boom, awesome. The other port we're exposing is 26656, which is the consensus P2P port, right? So that's for the validators to talk to each other. Other important things that we've changed so there's a default that's in both the Akash documentation and in the Overclock repo. We've changed some things. One of the big ones is that it took absolutely ages to unpack that snapshot and get it running. That is because a lot of these processes in the Cosmos SDK are single threaded, so they're memory bound. So I think the one in the docs has 4 gig of memory set. So I've bumped that up to 16 gig. So if you don't know who Envoy Labs are, we run nodes on Stargaze, Juno. We have run on other networks, but we've come off them in the past. And we actually do a lot of the validator coordination for Juno. So I've seen a lot of different node configs, and on Juno, we're typically nodes are running 32 gig, 64 gig, 128 gig of RAM. So 4 gig didn't seem enough to me, so I bumped that up. And we're using 350 gig of storage to make sure that we can actually unpack that snapshot in the first place. If you were running this right at the end of the day, you might want to bump it up a little bit to be sure. I think the snapshot's about 60 gig when unpacked because it is pruned. So you should be fine with 350 gig. We're only going to run this for a few hours at most, though, so it probably will be okay. Final other things, there's some placement info. Again, in the default instructions, they have a key, which basically represents it identifies a particular provider, I guess. If you want to remove that so you get more bids. And finally, the final thing we've changed is that in the docs, it says to use the amount 100 UAKT. I've found that the providers that bid for 100 UAKT didn't work so well. You would either get no bids or you get bids and then get strange problems like deployments being closed on you. So I would bump that up to 500 or even 800, which is going to mean you're not going to get like a colossal insane saving on this over running a cloud provider. So that is the one caveat. You can probably fine tune that number so it works for you. But what we're doing right now at Needlecast is we are evaluating running nodes seriously on Akash as an alternative to AWS or GCP or whatever. So we don't really care about spending a little bit more if it means it is more stable. So that's super important. Cool. I've noticed there's a couple of questions in the chat. So Ted Crypto, will there be question and answer? Yeah, just throw them in the chat as we're going and I'll come to them. L Burton, I can't find Envoy Labs on Twitter. We don't have an account on the Bluebird app, but you can follow me. I'm Frey_Needlecast. That's probably the best way to keep in touch with stuff that Envoy is doing. Okay, cool. So that is this file. I'll stick it up on GitHub Gist or something so that it's there. And now I guess we should just run it, right? And see what happens. So we want to create a new deployment. So this is the one that's now, this one's running. It's chugging along happily. We're pretty happy with it. But we want to create exactly the same thing for some reason. Costs us a few dollars, I guess. So the app really doesn't like how much we've blown it up there. So sorry about the triple dots and things. But let's see if we can get through it. So we're going to create a new deployment. We want to create an empty template. We're going to call it, what was the last one called? Was it called YOLO? So we'll call it livestream YOLO. Now, I think to kind of set expectations, unpacking that snapshot is going to take a while. So we'll give it a few minutes and then we'll see if it has had time to unpack. If not, we'll just assume that it worked, right? Because the last one did. Okay. So we do know this manifest actually does work, but so we've just dropped the manifest in there. If you do something that means the manifest is invalid, it will actually tell you that the manifest is invalid. You see unexpected end of stream. So it gives you a little bit of sense checking that you have actually got a valid manifest, and then you can go create deployment. So it's going to ask for you to add to your escrow account for this deployment in order to fund it, right? And it will close out the deployment if you don't fund it. So standard is 5 AKT. We'll just throw that in there. And we'll approve that. And you'll see this looks really suspiciously like Kepler, huh? Yeah. So, but either way, very familiar if you've used Kepler before. And I should have put it on high, shouldn't I? We're streaming, go wild. And now we play the waiting game. So we're going to get a few bids. So like I said, you can get, if you push that pricing way down, you can probably get bids, especially for lower amounts of compute, for like a few bucks a month. But yeah, we've pushed it up here mainly because I wanted to get a bunch of bids and also because I just wanted to run them. So let's have a look at some of these. What we've got. Host that's been audited. Cool. Interesting. And so I think that looks like a bare metal type situation, that first one. And this is the one we actually used for the other one. So let's YOLO it onto a different one that's slightly cheaper. This might go wrong. Who knows? We're about to find out. And we probably want one that has an Intel CPU just to be on. Oh, no, wait, we're not running Juno, are we? So it doesn't really matter if it's an Intel CPU. But let's accept the lowest bid because we're going to be cheap and we'll see what happens. Although actually $50 isn't massively cheap, but never mind. Hopefully that will now work. So transaction succeeded. Now it's going to send the manifest. Fingers crossed. Come on. It does look a bit weird when we've zoomed in this much. Nobody was expecting us to zoom in this much on this app ever. So it's now basically kicking off. This again looks pretty similar to if you've ever done a Kubernetes deployment, right? So it's going to throw that up, as in throw it up on the thing. Back off. Restarting failed. That's not good. That's not good. Is it dying? This is all fun and games, actually, isn't it? I was kind of hoping the stream would last about 20 minutes and then we'd just get to, do a victory loop and then, like I say, stand under a shower or something. I think this one's going to fail, isn't it? I've got a bad feeling about this now. Brace for impact. Yeah, this feels like it's dead. Yeah, so if you look at the if you look at the leases tab as well, that'll tell you what's going on at any given point as well with the deployment. Or it would do if something was actually going on, rather than it falling over, which kind of looks like might be what is happening right now. Okay. For the purposes of getting this done on a live stream, do we just kill it and move on? What do you reckon? Oh, I think it. No, I can. I think it has. I would expect it to scale up the replica and not to have random back off errors. I've not seen that before on a healthy deployment. So, let's go have a look at our other one. I'm not sure there will still be any events in the log. We can have a look. We can see if it looks the same or looks different. It might be so long in the past that logs have been rotated or cleared up, in which case we're out of luck. For events, the events is basically the logs. So this tab here, logs, is what you get once the node's actually started. It's just like standard out basically. Events is like the system event. Well, it's like the Kubernetes or whatever events, as I understand it, like as it's actually initializing the pod and deployment. Okay, maybe it's toast. This kind of it's still quite seat of your pants stuff, Akash, and this is definitely par for the course a little bit. Sometimes weird things happening. Well, that's not the victory lap I'd hoped for. Let's go just make another one and see if it works, and we'll choose the same provider that we did last time. Okay, so we should probably well, live stream. What are we gonna call this? It's gonna be Back for the Dead. So we'll call it the Undertaker. Well, it's the Undertaker deployment. Last one failed. 4 out of 40 for the last deployment, which has gone to the dark dimension. And we'll create another one. And this one, I have high confidence that this one's going to work. I mean, I have to. We've it's really hot here. We've got this one's got to succeed, so I can wrap up the stream and go outside and get and be somewhere cooler. Right. Let's just pick another provider. Let's pick Europlots because I know that one worked last time. Let's see what happens. Okay, create the lease. Okay, yeah, in the chat, it will be fine doing a live demo test. Said no one ever. Exactly. That is exactly right. So yeah. Another question. Yeah, I read somewhere that those environment variables been disclosed. So Akash is fine for public stuff, but not for private stuff. That is absolutely correct. If you supplied, for example, location keys or anything like that, you are sharing them with Akash, the provider, and the scheduler, all that kind of stuff. So if you are doing any kind of signing, like for an actual validator, so this is an RPC, it doesn't really matter. But it looks like it's that Touchwood might be working. Cool. If you're doing it for an RPC, probably not a problem. If you're doing it for an actual validator node, probably a problem. So you sorry, let's just kill this one because it's toast. So if you're already using remote signing, that isn't a problem. Or you can there's some instructions in the overclockers Cosmos Omnibus repo for how you can provide key matter from an encrypted S3 bucket, for example. So there's some ways of doing that kind of stuff too. And now, so that one has successfully initialized the pod. It's scaled up a replica set. Happy days. And so we can see the logs here. This one would be familiar to a lot of node operators. That's a daemon init instruction being sent, and then it's downloading a Genesis file quite quick, and then downloading a snapshot. A snapshot will take some time. So we'll give it like 3 minutes, and then I'm going to end the live stream. I'm going to tell you it succeeded on Twitter, and you have to believe me. Meanwhile, I will be outside under a hose eating ice cubes or something, whatever one should do on the hottest day of the year. And a fun other thing you can do here is, this isn't really a shell, but you can send commands and get some return from instructions. It's worth knowing that your the binary, right, is at like root cache, and then you can actually look in config stuff like that. So you can actually see that it's downloaded that Genesis and it's stuck it there. So This isn't a shell, it's just sending an instruction and sending you the response. So you don't have access to things like change directory or that kind of thing, but you can send basic instructions and get basic debug information back, as well as download files. So kind of a useful little interface to have if you need to debug basic stuff. And we've got 1 minute and 45 seconds left before I run out of patience on this snapshot downloading. So yeah, let's see. We've got any other questions? Okay. So another one from Ted Crypto. Let's say if you have an app that depends on Postgres, Reddit, RabbitMQ, and the app container, which is the interpreter, is it possible to run such an app on a cache? In theory, yes. I probably wouldn't. Persistent storage is relatively new. It went out with the last release, and it seems like you go on the Akash Discord and have a look around, talk to the team, people more knowledgeable than me. I'm just some guy on the internet after all. But it seems like from the team, they are treating it like a relatively experimental feature at present. And yeah, so we're using ephemeral storage for this because it's just an RPC. And actually, when we look at running, so we're doing this to evaluate running an Akash validator for a cache on a cache. And we're looking to run that using ephemeral storage because we're looking to actually throw away the container periodically and rebuild it, essentially just rebuild it fresh, and use our remote signer to shuffle to the new one. In time, I guess at the moment we're on TMKMS and we're moving to Horcrux, I guess eventually. So that will allow us actually to run more than one node on a cache. So that's our motivation, is we actually can potentially afford a bit more fault tolerant, a bit more fault than a persistent database, stored on a container like that. So it's going to run out of time. And that's 32 minutes. Okay, so what have we done here? We've gone through the instructions to deploy an RPC on a cache, and we've shown that there's some bits that you need to do that are slightly different. I'll put that in a GitHub gist just momentarily, and I'll put that on. Whatever. I'll share it in the notes or something. And yeah, so some things need to be a little bit different from the instructions. Recommend you use the Cachealytics to deploy it. You basically just set it up, bash the information in with the manifest, find a provider for which you might need to obviously, pay a bit more, and then deploy it, and it should work. And then you'll be able to look at leases, which at the moment is going to error, right? So if we copy that, and then we go to it, we're going to find it's probably going to 502 right now. Yeah, it's going to 502 because obviously it's not actually initialized yet because it's still unpacking that big old snapshot. But that's why we gave it more RAM, because this bit takes ages. Like, no kidding, if you have only like 2 gig of RAM or something on this, it will take absolutely ages, whereas 16 gig, 10-20 minutes you could be up. Especially this morning when I launched that other one, it was pretty quick. So, but it is like now, I know, whatever, 8 hours after I did that, so it's of course huge by now, that snapshot. All right, okay, that's all I got to say. Thanks for joining me. Sorry about having to, deal with the postman earlier. All right.